In this episode, we're visiting two bottle farms that have been passed down through generations, but have taken completely different paths. The first has stayed relatively small, growing with the seasons, using equipment that has been running for decades and committing to sourcing locally. The second has embraced specialisation and automation on a scale we've never seen before. One produces around 30 tonnes of mushrooms each year, the other produces close to 1,000 tonnes of a single species. They couldn't look more different, but both are striving for efficiency in their own ways.
Here we are at the Fuji Mushroom Center, another farm here in Japan, and Mt Fuji in the background. Beautiful day today. This is some tea fields from the same company, their family's farm. It's got some tea orchards here, and this farm produces around 30 tonnes of mushrooms using bottles and bagging technology. But yeah, we're just in a mixture of suburbia here. Got a great little urban mushroom farm that's been going for around 30 years or so, and they sort of pioneered the growing of orange or the king oyster mushrooms here in Japan. Some proper traditional mushroom cultivation here.
Fuji Mushroom Center feels very different from the large commercial farms we've visited so far in Japan. It's smaller, quieter, and much more hands-on. Many of the machines here date back to the earliest days of bottle cultivation. Some are over 40 years old. But old doesn't necessarily mean inefficient.
They bought this in the 80s.
Sure.
Used.
Yeah, right.
So this is about a 40-year-old piece of machinery. So you can see what just normal use of machinery. You can still run these machines for decades, especially with a bit of care.
Yeah, so the bottles are coming along and putting the substrate into the bottles from the mixing machine up here with the bran and the rice bran and the wheat bran. And then this machine inserts holes into the tops of the bottles, which is where the spawn will be inoculated later on. This is the inoculating room where they inoculate the bottles with the spawn. Also very old technology, but bottles of sawdust spawn are put over in this machine here, and as the bottles go through, it injects the sawdust spawn into the bottles, and at the facility they make all their own spawn here. Long life on Japanese machinery, 30-year-old machines.
So everything he uses is like produced nearby, except the deciduous sawdust is from another part of Japan. この古葉樹のおがくずはどこから購入してますか？
埼玉県。
From Saitama, so it's Saitama Prefecture, so it's neighboring prefecture, so it's not too far. The only thing is that the wheat bran, Japan doesn't grow much wheat, so the wheat bran has to be imported. And that's the only thing that the Komenuka, この近くの隣, so it's from they have a rice, what is it called, the hulling facility nearby. He buys from there, so that's all very locally sourced. So the wheat bran is the only thing that's not nearby sourced.
Shorter supply chains reduce transport, reduce costs, and allow the farm to better understand the materials entering its production process. For Mr. Takeshi, sustainability isn't something separate from running an efficient business. The two are directly connected.
All of the spent sawdust substrate It goes to an acquaintance that runs a dairy farm. As I said, on the foothills of Fuji there are many dairy operations, and it's mixed with cow manure and fermented and then sold as a fertilizer. And so he delivers. They have a truck and they make deliveries, and of course the only payment they get is enough to cover the gasoline and the transportation costs, but it's all reused and recycled locally. So his is all used locally, and the sawdust itself, other than the oak sawdust for the shiitake, is also all from the surrounding foothills of Fuji. So everything is locally produced and locally used down to the waste products, which is one of his interests is in sustainability and circular agricultural systems.
We're in the shiitake fruiting room at the moment. You can see all the little shiitakes popping out of the blocks. They try and limit the pinning so that there's only a select number of shiitakes on the blocks so that you can get nice big shiitake mushrooms. If you let a lot of pins happen on the blocks, you'll get a lot smaller shiitakes and a lower value. So they look like they're not producing that much on each block, but that's deliberately done so that you can get nice large shiitakes which fetch high value here.
All of the flushes in the same room here?
全部2階より3階よりも全部同じ部屋で。
全部1、2、3。
これは一応書いてるだから分かる。They're all in the same room, yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So yeah, all in the same room. In the room we first entered in, they moved the shiitake for the last time there. So that's the 5th or 6th flush. So they go 5 or 6 flushes with the shiitake until they throw them away.
So we've got the first flush happening here. You can see the blocks have got a little bit of white still on the blocks. So the freshest blocks in the room give you the best flush. Then they subsequently soak the blocks each time to get 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th flushes. So we've got a row here of 2nd flush, and then as the room goes along, you've got 3rd flush and 4th flush. So very labour intensive to do multiple flushes of shiitake because you have to soak the blocks in water overnight. But because shiitake take a long time to incubate, you want to get the most value out of it. But in this facility, they have different mushrooms at different stages. And in other facilities, they will have separate rooms, one for 1st flush, one for 2nd flush, one for 3rd flush.
Each successive crop may be smaller, but it extracts a little more value from the raw materials, energy and time already invested in producing that block or bottle. This isn't necessarily the right approach for every farm. Additional flushes require more labour, more space, more time, but within this production system it makes economic sense. The goal isn't simply to grow mushrooms quickly, it's to honour the energy already stored in the substrate by getting as much from it as possible.
But you can see this facility and these fruiting rooms, they're not a whiz-bang. They're just what you need to grow the mushrooms. So a lot of people think you need a lot of investment, a lot of money to create the best fruiting rooms, the best insulation, best climate control. But as you see in these Japanese farms where they specialise in perfected mushroom growing, they're just using a lot of equipment to make it happen. So you don't have to do huge expense on buying the most perfect humidifying systems, where a lot of these farms that we're seeing, they're just making their own out of tubs, PVC piping, just like people at home, but just on a larger scale. So they're just scaling it up, and you don't need that huge investment that a lot of farms you can see in other parts of the world do. In Japan, they're using limited resources and they're still doing 30 tons of mushrooms a year out of this small farm. So very efficient way of making mushrooms.
Rigged it together so when this runs and it releases heat, it just goes to heat here. So they just like completely set it up so that they don't have to use energy to dry mushrooms.
Sure, yeah, that's smart.
That same philosophy extends to the design of the farm itself. Sterilisation produces a large amount of heat. Rather than allowing that heat to disappear, it's redirected and used to dehydrate mushrooms.
So they can't use it unless they're autoclaving. They only run the autoclave about once a week.
Yes.
So they don't rot. They partially dry in the sun so that they can hold them until they can dry everything with the autoclave. It should be eco, but also it's kind of an example of how being ecologically responsible is also the cheap thing to do. So it's a lot of places have this image that when you're doing you're being sustainability has a surcharge, and I think a lot of cases actually being sustainable is cheaper.
Sure.
It might be more trouble, but it's cheaper when you work the end rounds. You're saving yourself money and energy at the end of the day. So I think it's a good example. And this is a very small, older facility, and they're still doing it. They're still doing it a very ecologically sustainable way. And I think it shows that anybody can take that kind of project on, especially when you design. You can design your workplace of your farm so that your energy flows are reused as much as possible.
Yeah, it's a smart way to build a facility.
Fuji Mushroom Center isn't only interesting because of its resourcefulness. Mr. Takeshi is also an amateur mycologist with a deep interest in the fungi growing naturally around the Mt Fuji area.
So this is the only farm in Japan that's cultivating this rare mushroom, Tamachure take, and it's a native from the Fuji area. So it's very rare to see. Apparently you can only eat the caps, and they're just experimenting with how to cultivate it at the moment. It's got a lot of health properties. That's a beautiful mushroom.
これがもうこれくらいまで
業者だけが使える。
というわけではないと思う。
So he says it's not what would you say, not gross, but it doesn't typically have, it's not delicious either. It says it's got a lot of interesting health properties, so he's seen some of the research that he's looked at. The cap, only eat the cap, because once it matures, the stem is immediately really tough, like rubber, like battered and made into fried or tempura or chips. It's quite nice. You're just cutting the caps. Your yield is quite small, so regarding the yield, it's not a good return. So he's trying to figure out. He's still in the process of testing for better cultivation methods of it.
We left Mr. Takeshi's farm really inspired by his approach. He's passionate about mushrooms, incredibly resourceful, and always looking for clever ways to make better use of energy and materials already around him. But there's more than one way to build an efficient mushroom farm, and our next stop couldn't look more different. First though, we couldn't come all this way and not take in the view.
That'll work.
I'm taking a video.
Fuji, famous for Fuji apples,
And the Fuji Mushroom Center.
and this Ferris wheel, which is well sketchy.
It's not sketchy.
It's actually really high quality. It's Japanese, so I was no issues getting into this Ferris wheel.
Do you like heights?
Now you made me get in the capsule.
Oh, I made you.
Yeah, she's
I
in
made
class.
you go in the glass one.
She's like, choose the glass one. Literally exactly the same as when you were just on the ground, let's be honest. So we're here in central Japan and we're at a Nameko factory. So this is Fuji High Tech, and they produce 3 tons of Nameko per day, and they only have around 20 staff. So we're going to go and check out how they do this.
Fuji High Tech has taken a completely different path. Where Fuji Mushroom Center grows several species, this facility is built almost entirely around one mushroom, Nameko. This isn't a farm, it's a factory. The scale of this place is incredible, and it's all dialed in to produce Nameko as efficiently as possible. These mixers hold 10 cubic meters of substrate each.
It's on me. Ours is 2 cubic meters, I think. 5 times as big. And they've got 4. They've got 20 times.
And it's all for Nameko.
The mixes are loaded from the floor above where the nutritional supplements are stored. For bottle cultivation, the structure of the substrate is even more important as there's less air exchange available to the mycelium. A mix of fine and coarse sawdust is supplemented with a mix of fine and coarse nutrients, such as soy hull and superfine wheat bran. This allows them to pack in the nutrients without compromising the structure of the substrate, keeping air gaps for the mycelium to grow through.
So there's 4 autoclaves here, and each autoclave holds around 10,000 bottles. And this facility can run through 40,000 bottles a day, and it's just Nameko. Specific bottle made for Namekos, so it's squatter with a wider lid, 800 grams of substrate.
Every piece of equipment has been designed around the same bottle, the same production cycle, and the same mushroom. Removing variation allows the farm to repeat the same process thousands of times each day.
So they have 3 rooms of this size that they're running for incubation.
There are 3 stages to Nameko incubation. The first week, the bottles are kept at 14 to 15 degrees Celsius to discourage contamination growth. The second stage, slightly warmer, at 16 to counteract the thermal mass of this much mycelium growing. Then finally, the rooms are held at 16 to 18 while the bottle fully colonizes, letting the mycelium to digest and absorb nutrients prior to fruiting. The whole process takes 10 weeks and is in complete darkness.
So for Nameko here, they're incubating for 10 weeks. 10 weeks for Nameko. And if you're doing 40,000 a day, 10 weeks is literally millions of bottles here. Millions and millions of bottles, so it's a huge process. So much thermal biomass going on here, heating everything up. They keep their incubation rooms around 16 to 18 degrees depending on which part of the cycle the bottles are in. Because as you can see, all of these bottles are producing heat and they need to have really efficient cooling. You can see on the ceiling here, the cooling systems that they've got here are just enormous to try and keep the conditions right for the mycelium.
To trigger the Nameko to pin, the bottles go through a process called kinkaki. The old layer of mycelium is scraped from the top of the bottle, exposing the fresh mycelium underneath.
Scraping machines, and you can see the blades, they spin with the bottles upside down, taking the top layer of mycelium off. So you want to have the young mycelium to induce the fruiting, and it's very important.
The fresh surface is sprayed with water. Then the bottles are moved into the pinning rooms, where they spend 10 days at 100% humidity developing their pin set.
This is the youngest, like we just recently put in here within the last day or so. As you see, it's still wet from the water flush.
これが金かきして多分2日か3日目ぐらい。
This is about 3 days in.
Sure.
この元はおがくずで茶色いのが
Really interesting fruiting room setup with these big canvas walls. You can see how many there are down the walls here.
全部えのきよりも若干長いです。
芽が出たり
And this is how they've, after the pin have started to form. This is still the pinning room. So from here on, they'll actually move it to another room with a stronger lighting.
Sure.
This is still just the
Increase
pinning.
the lighting.
Yeah.
ここの部屋割りは
Right. So it's thoroughly divided. So you have the incubation room we were in. We move here. This is the pinning room. After pinning is fully completed, they move to the fruiting room.
Sure.
So it has a separate flow for each.
Walking through water here because there's 100% humidity throughout these fruiting rooms and pinning rooms, so they keep the humidity all the way up at 100% for Nameko to form properly.
じゃあ育成室
And this is the fruiting room.
Here we go.
No, they're not quite ready for harvest.
So these bottles are 2 to 3 days away from harvesting.
These Nameko bottles produce a single commercial flush, around 200 grams from an 800 gram substrate.
Just like a sea of perfect Nameko mushrooms. Wild.
カットするからのもあるね。
At this scale, even a small inefficiency becomes significant. A few unnecessary seconds repeated once might not matter. Repeated across thousands of bottles, millions of bottles, every day becomes labour, energy and money. Here, waste isn't only discarded substrate or lost heat. It can be wasted movement, wasted time, or unused capacity.
Automatic machines that cut the tops off the Nameko. Can you imagine tens of thousands of bottles? You can't do this by hand, so they've got machinery here to do that. The bottles are loaded over here, go down the conveyor belt, the machines cut the tops off, and then they're put through in a packaging.
Computer.
So the computer is weighing the mushrooms and grading the sizes, small, medium, large, and then they're put through another machine which vacuum seals them. So it's all automated, it's all machine run, and then they get packed into styrofoam boxes, ice, and they're sent all over the country.
書いてないけど短いなめこは。
4 to 5 days is the
Even
typical.
vacuum seal.
Even vacuums from the fridge. Maybe like the quality would be pushing it, but maybe 1 week would be
Yeah.
the longest. Very so-so.
で出荷が
The finished product, all vacuum sealed, graded by size, ready for the domestic market, 3 tons per day. Nameko, it's where it's at.
You could argue these two farms have nothing in common apart from the bottle method itself.
Harder.
They're operating on completely different scales. But underneath, both farms are guided by the same understanding. Every harvested mushroom represents an investment. Raw materials, time, labour, space and energy, they all have a cost. How you get the greatest return on that investment can look completely different from one farm to the next. The best system is the one that makes the most of what you have. And with that, our time in Japan comes to an end. Next episode, we're heading to Europe, from the world's largest grain spawn producer to some of the pioneers who helped shape modern mushroom cultivation. New countries, new techniques, and a completely different side of the mushroom industry. See you there.
Sakura at night.
In the top 100 places to see Sakura.
I'm putting it in the top 10.
Top 10, top 5.
Where are you getting 99 other places?
I know, imagine what the other places look like.
How many blossoms do you want? Literally, you can't fit many more on these trees.
How high is this?
Pretty epic.